So I guess when you're not making money on YouTube as a content creator, you have all the time in the world to be on Twitter, arguing and posting about a bunch of things that really can get you into more trouble or don't really make much sense to you. And that's the case with Myron. He's on Twitter talking about Israel, the Palestinian conflict, blaming Israel for the assassination attempt on Trump, instead of actually trying to get more OnlyFans models into the podcast studio and do some content. Oops! Sorry, they got demonetized. So let's keep repeating the same bad habits that has cost us millions of dollars on Fresh and Fit by wasting more time talking about things that don't help us achieve our goals. And this is what Myron does. He likes to engage people on debating subjects that really don't pertain to him, which is what I typically don't do. For people who are not pro-African American, I don't engage them. I don't want to talk to them. Not to say that that's wrong, because I'm so focused on trying to push what I'm doing forward, I'm focused on myself. Again, this is not what Myron is doing. He debates people all day on Twitter, usually losing by a lot, and then throwing insults after he smoked in the argument. We saw that when he got into it with Tariq Nasheed. But there is another brother. Marcel Dixon. Now, to be honest, I've seen Marcel Dixon around on social media. I've heard of his name. I never really took the time or opportunity to really check him out. I did see that he has been invited to some of Tariq Nasheed's events. I didn't know he's from South Carolina, but this brother is a straight intellectual. He doesn't take a whole lot of digs. He doesn't get into the roasting. He's not trying to take the conversation there, which is what Tariq Nasheed can do if you push him, but he's gonna stay really on point and talk about the topics only. And if you're not gonna talk about the topics, he'll just stop. And this is what happened with Mr. Marcel Dixon. He was trying to have an educated conversation with white conservatives or people on the alt-right or whoever they want to consider themselves to be. And it seems like they were listening, they were engaging him. And the first part of his argument was the difference between the white right and the left for the black community and why you don't get so many African Americans voting Republican.
The truth of the matter is, a large swath of America, I'll say even a majority of Americans, are tuned out of these spaces. So what we really have are Americans who are politically active, who are politically engaged, who go to their echo chambers. You got the echo chamber on the left and the echo chamber on the right. And let me tell you why sometimes it seems, but I'm telling y'all, it's a myth that Black Americans, by and large, are somehow represented well or adherents of the left. It's because spaces on the right, Malcolm X said that the white liberal have mastered the art of pretending to be the Negro's friend. So we don't get the blatant anti-Blackness on the left. Oh, it's there. Look at our communities and look at who we've been voting for the past 60 years. That's the anti-Blackness. But on the right, we get the baby mama, baby daddy stereotypes. We get the y'all have failed to pull yourselves up by your bootstraps. We get the reparations. We get all that nastiness coming from the right. So when you have Black people who are politically engaged, they're going to go to the side that just seems to be the less hostile, even though that side is actually even more hostile because they're supposed to be representing you with policies, but instead they just give you a symbolic representation, a few symbolic victories. They may give a Black person a job like Ketanji Jackson Brown. That's supposed to somehow lift off 55 million of us, do something for us, and it doesn't. So that's why sometimes we have this misconception that Black Americans, by and large, are lefties, which I'm telling y'all, if anyone actually is in Black
Marcel, we're conservatives at home, but Democrats at the ballot box. It's been this way for a long time.
Largely conservative. The problem is, and I've been to MAGA rallies, I've been to American Patriot rallies, and one thing I appreciate about those spaces are two things. One, they are willing to have intellectual discourse. When I mention reparations, they don't throw tomatoes and all walk out. They sit there and we have those conversations. Two, they acknowledge that the white conservatives and the non-Black conservatives, but even Black conservatives, and they have allowed bigots to feel too comfortable saying that they represent the white right or that they represent conservatism. There has been a unfortunate conflation of being conservative and being on the right with bigotry. And that is something that the right is going to have to address. Why bigots sometimes feel more comfortable being blatant bigots on the right. Now, me, I like my bigotry blatant. I like to see who you are. Show me who you are, and I can deal with you accordingly. But that's where that misconception comes from. And that's why sometimes you go on these college campuses and you get these little boulets think they're elitist blacks. They are usually the ones who are really aligned with the far left. Most of the nastiness I have faced has not come from white conservatives. It has not come from the American patriot types. The nastiness I have faced, 98% of it has come from black people who think that being a Democrat is more important than being black. And even black Americans. That's where most of the nasties I face. That's where most of the slander I face has come from. That's where a lot of the personal attacks I have faced has come from. Yes, I've gotten some hate messages from these wannabe white supremacist types, but a lot of the hatred I come from have come from those same types, Devon, who probably gave you hell on Georgetown campus or called you a coon. So the reason the right sometimes doesn't have the same reach among the black political spectra is because they welcome too much blatant bigotry, whereas the left is just as bigoted by neglecting us and feeding BS to us and putting on these black faces and making it seem like all we care about is aborting black babies. When I can tell you, here in the South, you talk to the average black family, abortion is not something we even think about. Usually, here, a person has a baby, the family member is going to take that baby in if the person who gave birth to that child is not able to do so. That's why you'll see an aunt sometimes raising their nieces and nephews, or you'll see sometimes a grandmother with their grandchildren until the parents get on their feet. Like this whole confiscation of guns. I'm here in the South. Black Americans are just as much gun aficionados as white Southerners. Trust you, we are. But the right is missing out on opportunities to do that. And that is the fault of the right for not engaging a lot of black voters out here. Because the truth be told, just like with white voters, over 55% of black voters aren't even active.
So that was a good case. It's the first time I really heard it put in that perspective. I mean, I know that's true, but he laid it out very well that anybody could understand it. Even the white people on there could understand it. And so did Myron. And this is when Myron is going to come in and he's going to try to attack the argument by just being messy.
So then why should they waste their time going after the black vote when it's only 15% of the population, and on top of that, about 50% aren't politically engaged? The reality is this, guys. Most Americans are stupid. They don't understand how the world works. They don't have a passport. They've never left their state. They can't even name 3 countries a lot of the times. And they're idiots. And the thing is that the left is cooler nowadays. It's cooler to be liberal. It's cooler to be super edgy and woke. That's what's cool. That's the problem with the conservative side for the long time, is that it hasn't been cool. Thankfully, there's some more creators coming out there that are conservative. There's some more creators coming. Hold on, let me finish my point, bro. Let me finish my point.
But with 33, we're like,
let me finish my point.
Million with 30
You're lagging right now.
People who actually vote. First of all, Asian Americans are a smaller contingent of the population. People still engage them. A huge percentage of the Hispanic population can't even vote. And you got people tripping over themselves to do things for illegal immigrants. And that includes the Republican Party. You even got people reach out to Native Americans who are like 2% of the population. So let's stop acting like 15% is such a small percentage where it's a damn lot. And 15% is actually an undercount because the census admits they undercount us by 3 or 4%. And in the South, Black Americans are usually in states like Georgia, Alabama, Louisiana, Mississippi, South Carolina, 30% or more of the population. So it's not a waste of time. Just like it's not a waste of time.
It is.
What?
They're not a majority, bro. And the reality is, if the way you're going to get the black voters is by giving them handouts, you guys cry about reparations. You guys want handouts all the time. That's just the reality. Let's call it spade a spade. The black community wants handouts all the time. That's what you guys want.
Handout?
So
Is it a handout when intern Japanese
yes.
Americans or their children got reparations? Was it a handout when these Native American tribal governments get settlements that sometimes go to them in direct cash payments? Is it a handout when Holocaust survivors and their descendants get direct cash payment? Is it a handout when the downwinders get paid their
All right.
reparations?
So let me ask you a question then, since you're a pro reparation guy. Let me ask you a question. Number one, how much money? Hold on. Yo, nobody can hear you, bro. Your internet sucks. Your internet sucks. Nobody can hear you. You're just lagging bad. Okay, fix your dial-up internet that you got. Your AOL. You know, your. I just got online. Let me finish my point here, okay? Because you reparation guys always want handouts, and it's ridiculous to me. Because here's my question: if you're going to go ahead and say, "I want reparations," like all these other crybabies, let me ask you this. Number one, who's going to pay for it? Number two, how do we identify who deserves it and who's going to get it? Number three, how are we going to be able to trace back lineage to identify you as a foundationally Black American? How far back are we going to go? Like, none of this stuff actually makes sense. And this is the problem when you want handouts. Who's going to pay for it and how are you going to actually implement it?
I have answered those questions. So first of all, the payments will come from where it's always come from, the federal government, like it's
the middle class. The middle class, because you're paying for it. The middle class is going to pay for it.
Answering your question. I'm answering your question. Number two, how do they identify who the foundational Black American? Before I even answer that, let's talk about handouts. You got a handout when your family was able to come here from war-torn, poverty-stricken Sudan. So let's not talk about handouts when I'm speaking with a living, walking, talking handout right now.
So that last comment when he was telling Myron that I'm talking to a person who's a walking handout, Myron didn't want to believe that, right? Myron was hurt because that was actually true. Myron was the one that made this conversation personal. Marcel Dixon was not there to make it personal. He was there to have a conversation, and many of the other people were there to have a conversation, but not Myron. Myron was there to get into some level of a shouting match. And when he said, hey, listen, your family has benefited from these free handouts, then he said, oh, here we go. Well, the reason why he said, oh, here we go, is because he didn't have a response to that question. And then it got even worse.
The government can identify who's a foundational Black American. Excuse me, you are talking to a man right now whose great-grandmother was raised by someone who was formerly enslaved. My great-grandmother died in 2015 at 101. That's how recent slavery was. Jim Crow and redlining, those things didn't enter to the 1970s. So you're easily able to identify who is a Black American and who's a Black immigrant. The federal government knows who comes here.
And the Black immigrants come here and do a lot better than the FBAs. You guys were born and raised here, speaking the English language. You always make excuses for why you're not successful. FBA's always got excuses. How come Nigerians come over here and kill it? And you guys are always crying about reparations, man. It's ridiculous.
All you have is emotionalism. You cannot
emotionalism.
You cannot refute anything I just said, because if you're going to make that argument.
Well, number one, you're lagging. Nobody can hear you. You keep lagging because you're on AOL dial-up. You got mail type internet. That's why nobody can hear you. You're out there in the boonies. Your internet sucks.
Look at it. Turn your microphone off. You'll be able to hear me better. Okay, thank you. The truth of the matter is, you have not been able to intellectually refute anything I've said, because the same arguments you're trying to make against reparations for us, you are not making against all those other groups I just named. Because I'm waiting for you to address the coal miners, the downwinders, the Native Americans, the intern Japanese, the Guamanians, the Holocaust survivors and their descendants, even though the Holocaust didn't even take place here on U.S. soil. If you're going to make those arguments against reparations for freemen, then you got to make those arguments against those people. And in the case of those people, it's not the ones who were necessarily done wrong, the people who were actually alive at that time. It's sometimes going to their children, grandchildren, great-grandchildren. So if you're going to call it handout, then you got to talk about the GI Bill. My great-grandfather is a World War...
serving your country and being Black is not the same thing, bro. What the f***? Serious?
My great-grandfather is a World War II veteran. He
deserves the reparations, not you, bro. And he deserves it, not you. That's the difference. Like, why are you trying to get handouts on your granddaddy? That's ridiculous.
Please stop crying.
That's ridiculous.
Put on your big boy pants and wipe the tears from your eyes, okay? My great-grandfather is
You're the one crying for reparations.
He is still alive. He's 100 years old. He never got...
So give him the money. Give him the money, not you.
So Marcel Dixon is saying that his relative or grandfather fought in certain wars, And so Myron is trying to use as an example or as an argument, well, then your grandfather deserves reparations and not you. So by that logic, Myron, does anybody that serves in the military that's an African American deserve reparations, or those who do not deserve to get it? See, the reality is, Myron, with that same logic, when your father was able to come to America from the Sudan, what if they were to be able to say, well, sir, you can come over, but by any chance, if you have a child in America, well, your child doesn't get American citizenship. Only you get American citizenship. Your child must go back to South Sudan. Well, even though you didn't come over to America and your father did, he did the work, you benefited from your father coming to America, and now you have American citizenship, which you will not give up and go to Sudan, right? See, the reality is that Myron just doesn't have any arguments to counteract anyone who's intelligent on these issues. And so when he can't do that, he begins to get frustrated. He begins to insult. He begins to talk about people's internet connections and things like this. And this is a person who considers himself to be somewhat intellectual, and it's embarrassing at the very least. And he's just getting picked apart. So with this thinking, it's obvious to be able to see why Myron, number one, got demonetized. Number two, why Myron is still unsuccessful, or going to continue to be unsuccessful, backing himself into a corner. But the last thing is this: those people who he's trying to impress on that particular Twitter space, they're gonna look at Myron and say, damn, this guy's an idiot. Like, the guy is giving out great examples of why the right is making some mistakes. He's doing it in a very respectful way. Here's an opportunity to engage this guy who possibly could join in on our behalf, because, hey, the right would like the African-American vote. They don't have to like the African-American community. They don't even have to want to intermix or even marry with them. But here's an opportunity to engage them and win the person over. But you have somebody like Myron who is basically stopping that because of his own bias against African-Americans, because he wants to call somebody a beggars and crybabies and things like that, when you got into the United States based on that merit. I'm not taking any shots at anybody who does that, but any immigrant who comes over to the United States does so most likely because they don't have any money. It's not like, me, when I want to go to Uganda or come to Poland, I'm coming with at least some borrowed money or my own money. That's not what Myron's family did, I'm pretty sure. So again, round of applause for Marcel Dixon for keeping it, very professional. And again, another embarrassing loss for Myron, who continues to show his immaturity the more he engages in this sort of talk. He's just not intelligent enough to keep these conversations going, which, in my honest opinion, stop the show. He's not good at dating either. He probably should just go back to that. The problem is he figured out a way to get demonetized when he was acting a damn fool. So guys, what do you think? It's your boy O'Shea Jackson back at it again with an episode of The Celebrity Junk. I appreciate you for all your use, Curtis Bell. We're out.